Well, it's interesting hearing from the engine manufacturers as well, of course. It is an engine track to a large extent, this, although that twisty infield section is going to make life a little more difficult for the chassis engineers, trying to get the balance between both aerodynamics and the engine and the chassis, getting it all work together, John. That's really what's got to work now in the next 45-minute session that we're preparing for. Yes, and in fact, the engine can play a very big part in that transition between the engine, the driver, the car, the aerodynamics, because if you've got an engine that is very progressive in the manner in which it delivers its power, then that means there's less transition or shock in the chassis. So you've got an engine that's maybe a little bit on the peaky side, not much low down, that when the power comes in, you get a sort of the back end sort of wants to go down. So modern engines, not much of that. But as it gets more refined, the ones that are doing it best, they find it is easier to set those cars up. And because you're tending to look at a circuit where you've got very high top speeds, but also very low speed hairpin bends, virtually the same as Monte Carlo, then it becomes, well, a little bit of a conundrum for the engineers. Nevertheless, somehow, and what is amazing, as we mentioned earlier, as of Saturday, or Friday afternoon, I should say, there were about 18 cars covered by just over a second. So, I mean, it's just very, very close. And that's going from the very best to those at the bottom of the field. Yes, I think it's going to be a very tight session that we're seeing, not only in the free practice coming up in a few moments' time, but in qualifying particularly. And the battle just outside the top 10, or trying to get into the top 10, will be separated by just hundredths of a second. Our range of screens here just showing us that mist is still hovering around a little bit, but track conditions are good. There's no dampness on circuit, very little wind to talk about as well. So they're all set up, and they'll be coming out in about 4.5 minutes time for that second session of 45 minutes. Mika Salo just discussing things with the Toyota engineers before getting ready to come out. Yes, and in terms of the weather, just to keep an eye on it, because it is quite critical, and teams are very much aware of the advantages of heavy moisture-laden air in terms of downforce, aerodynamic downforce and engine performance. So that humidity is reducing as the track temperature is rising. Ambient staying about the same, about 17, but track temperature now up to 21. Now, as we're getting quite close to the start of this session, let me tell you, I'm very glad that we've been joined by Giancarlo Fisichella. Good morning, Giancarlo. Hope you're well. How are things looking at the track today? Are you happy with track conditions?
Yeah, I'm quite happy, especially considering my position now. I'm the seventh quickest, so it's good. The car is reasonable good. It's a quite good setup, and we are still working to improve that. But doesn't look too bad. I hope to be in top 8, top 10 in qualifying.
Giancarlo, good morning. It's John. This morning you were second quickest down the straight. How much sacrifice does that involve in the slow parts of the circuit in terms of downforce?
Yeah, exactly. We are just working now on the level of downforce. We went with less downforce on the previous run, and now we go with more downforce, and we'll see if it's better or not. But obviously, with less downforce in the middle sector, I was struggling a little bit with the grip, so it's quite easy to make mistake. We'll see. We'll see if it's better, more or less.
Now, have you got this improved engine from Honda, which is primarily for qualifying, in the car at the minute?
Yeah, we used already that engine in qualifying in Monza, and looks alright. The power is much better than normal, so I'm quite confident.
Finally, Giancarlo, it's going to be quite a battle, I think, to be fastest of the Bridgestone runners apart from Ferrari. We've seen that battle considerably over the last few Grand Prix. What are your prospects? Do you think you can be fastest Bridgestone runner behind Ferrari today?
I hope so. It's my target to be the quickest Bridgestone after Ferrari, obviously, and to be in top 8.
Great. Okay, well, best of luck with that today, and we'll look forward to your progress in the qualifying session later. So that is, I think, going to be quite an intense battle, the likes of BAR. It's been Villeneuve the last couple of times, as I mentioned earlier, who's won that own private little battle. I think Jordan would like to come back at BAR with that similar engine power.
Yes, and it's just, again, looking at the straight line speeds. Giancarlo was second quickest, but in fact Olivier Panis matched that at 335 kilometers per hour. And then Jacques Villeneuve was 1 kilometre per hour down on the two other Honda users. Of course, you didn't get a straight line speed from Takuma Sato, and no doubt he'd have been quickest of all because he weighs about as much as a flea, and he's so tiny. it gets a really good airflow into the airbox. So expect to see Sato's Honda engine Jordan pretty quick down the straight here this afternoon.
Yes, that's right. Apart from Barrichello's time, 3 next speeds were all belonging to Honda. Ralf Schumacher here getting into his car. He also had a good top speed, 334 kilometers per hour, as he climbs aboard the Williams BMW, and they look for an opportunity to try and close that gap up a little bit to Ferrari. Remember, Michael Schumacher's never been beaten to pole position here at Indianapolis in the 2 previous years that this track has been run. Michael has taken pole on both occasions, taken one of the victories, but beaten by Mika Hakkinen at McLaren last year. And there's the man we were speaking to just a few moments ago. He looks in pretty relaxed mode today, doesn't he? He quite chatty on the answers there. He looks fairly happy. So let's hope that they really can challenge today for a decent top 10 qualifying slot.
Yeah, it's a pretty sort of relaxed sort of morning here. There's not too much pressure, although the pressure is underlying because the battle that's going on with Jordan and BAR, particularly in regard to the championship, and of course Jaguar just 1 point ahead of Jordan. So BAR 6, Jordan 7 and Jaguar 8 points. Those 3 teams, really there is a lot for them to fight for here this weekend, and qualifying is a very major part of that fight.
So here we go with the second and last session of free practice before qualifying begins here today. 45 minutes they now have, and as we go through this session, expect them to be pumping the fuel out and getting a little closer to a true qualifying setup. Heading down through turns 3 and 4, and now through the quick turn 5. This is the tighter left-hander at turn number 6, taking his second gear. A little blast up then towards turn 7, and then onto the backstretch as we see a number of cars joining Kimi Raikkonen on circuit. Jarno Trulli, also the Toyota there of Mika Salo coming onto track, and I think track will get fairly busy quite quickly.
Yes, I would expect to see pretty much the entire field. That will be 20 cars. Of course, Takuma Sato will maybe be out at the very end as we look into Heinz-Harald Frentzen as he's preparing to go out in the Sauber. So initially you get a flurry of cars or activity on the circuit, and then they'll all rush back in after having done maybe 3 flying laps, possibly only 2 in some cases, and then the preparation and the build-up for that sort of last chance to simulate a qualifying attempt. What happens for a lot of drivers is they find they go quicker, more comfortably in this session than they might do in qualifying, and that's because they had the continuity of running all the way through, whereas in qualifying it's go out, do the time, come back in again. Very tough 1 lap qualifying situation for everybody.
Let's just ride with Raikkonen for a moment. Nice view there from just behind the front wing of the Finn. Sounds good and committed already.
It also sounds like there's not very much throttle movement for Kimi Raikkonen. It's very much like a switch. It's either off or it's full throttle, which is quite interesting, and maybe that's part of the character of this man. That's maybe how he likes it. Other drivers like a little bit more lead on the throttle, just to enable them to pick the throttle up without so much aggression from the engine.
Just backed off a little bit now, perhaps looking for some clear space. Checks his mirrors. Does check his mirrors this time, as opposed to in qualifying last time at Monza. Now he's back up to speed, having found himself some clear space. Now, what's been going on down here? Mika Salo locking up at turn 1.
Yeah, just didn't get his front brakes sufficiently up to temperature, and got a massive lock-up coming into turn 1. So again, there's the slip road back in again, which allows you to blend in the exit of 2 as you come into this long turn 3.
Michael Schumacher prepares to come back out. He is fastest, remember. We have the 2 Ferraris first and second, ahead of Coulthard, Montoya and Raikkonen. Ralf Schumacher 6th fastest, then Fisichella, Irvine, Trulli and Salo. Frentzen 11th fastest, driving the Sauber this weekend. Jenson Button is 12th fastest, then Heidfeld, De La Rosa, Panis, Villeneuve, Mark Webber, Alan McNish, Alex Young and Takuma Sato did not set a time this morning because of that engine failure. Now I wonder how they're getting on with that engine change, that rear end change. Bruce Jones is finding out more from Gary Anderson.
Gary Anderson, there's been some furious, busy work in the Jordan garage trying to sort out a car for Takuma Sato. Have you finished the work?
Well, not quite yet, no. The car didn't get back to quite late after the session, so it normally takes us about half an hour to do the amount of work we need to do, so we should get out for the last 25 minutes or so.
So you were taking the engine out of the spare chassis and putting it into his race chassis?
Yeah, the regulations mean you can't use that chassis, so They've had to take the engine and gearbox, the complete back end off the spare car to put onto the race car, because that's the quickest way of doing it, because it's all together, ready to go.
We'll see. Best of luck. Thanks, Gary.
A rather slow-moving Minardi just being passed by Ralf Schumacher. That was Mark Webber. Let's hope that that was just him looking for space and not an actual problem, though he has stopped, I think, just looking at our track map here, as Ralf Schumacher continues on around through the last corner, turn 13. This is looking like a pretty quick lap from Ralf Schumacher.
Well, it certainly looks like it may be a personal improvement. It is. He goes on a 12.169. So Ralf Schumacher, third quickest, but still some considerable distance away from the two Ferraris. And there is Mark Webber pulled off. And again, probably just very much on an out lap. Mark Webber will have just begun to do a timed lap, and he stopped just before, or at the apex, the middle of turn 11.
That's disappointing for the Australian. He is clearly getting out of the car, and that's the end of the session for him. So the yellow flags are out at that part of the track, hence the yellow dots at the top of our screen. Drivers have to be a little wary through that section. They may well try and move the Minardi off a little further, although he seems to have parked it in a relatively safe place. Let's see if we can pick up when Webber slowed down. We're looking actually here at Raikkonen. What's he been up to? Did he run a little wide?
I suspect he did the very thing. Oh, he didn't just run wide, he just did a quick little loop. And that was out of turn 11 as well. Now, that's an unusual pace. We saw Irvine off there yesterday, but maybe that was just a little bit slack. I mean, Raikkonen caught the grass before the curb. He probably thought, no problem for me, I'm a Finn, I can drive on slippery surfaces. And he got caught out by that. Yeah,
it's just that little bit too wet still to control it. Webber having a look around the back end of the Minardi.
Michael Schumacher, Ben, he's at it again. Fastest in first sector. All purple for Michael Schumacher. We wait to see what happens because he comes into second.
Yeah, it looks as though he's going to set a new fastest time. Certainly by the first sector time, it's looking very quick indeed. And let's just see as he comes through the next twiddly section of track, turns 8, 9 and 10. And this is where it really is fiddly and where the Ferrari chassis seems to work so well. Second checkpoint though, a little slower.
Yeah, it's interesting that he dropped away by 0.2 of a second. And that may be just an indication that the tyre, while the first sector is relatively straightforward, so it's a blast on the straight, but second sector is more technical, and if the tyre has lost a little of the edge, then it will show up in those very slow corners, around 5, 6, and then of course around 9 and 10.
So not the fastest lap that he's done, but nonetheless it's still faster than anybody else has done, with a fairly slow top speed that time through. I think he may well have backed off a bit as he went over the line. And therefore Michael probably coming in at the end of this lap. Kimi Raikkonen is already in after that harmless spin out of turn 11. It is a corner where they're trying to carry as much speed as possible, and perhaps just therefore drifting a little wide onto the grass, but they can't afford to do that so much today with the grass being so damp.
It's an indication of the level of confidence that Raikkonen has, that he thought, I can get away with that, whereas other drivers might think, oh, I need to be careful, I might get caught out by that. And you want drivers that think the way Raikkonen thinks, because once you start to think the opposite way, then you're on your way out.
Montoya back in as well. He's still fifth fastest on a 1:12.197. That time was set earlier on in the first free practice session. So Williams still working hard to get their cars on the pace. Ralf Schumacher, remember, is third fastest. There is the Montoya clan sitting up on the wall there. There's his dad on the far right. Always tremendous supporter of Juan Pablo. He used to race karts himself, and of course brought Juan Pablo into kart racing as a young lad, and has seen him progress through all of the ranks with his tremendous style and brio and panache, which has proved to be popular the world over. So Frentzen on track at the moment, but let's see if we can find out a little bit more what the problem was for Mark Webber as Bruce Jones speaks to Paul Stoddart.
Paul Stoddart, we've just seen Mark Webber pull over by the side of the track. He got out, was inspecting the rear of his car. Any idea if he knows what's wrong with it?
No, until he gets back to the pits, we don't. There's nothing on the telemetry. Everything appeared to be fine, but obviously the car's had a problem. We'll have to wait for the driver and the car to get back.
We'll try and intercept him, thanks.
Unusual for the teams with all their telemetry and gadgets and computers not to actually know the cause of a problem. I suppose if it's a simple mechanical failure, it's not always indicated on the telemetry. Electronics problems more than likely are.
So this is the work that's been going on in the VAR garage all the way through the brake. And when you get the underfloor off, there was a gearbox removed, and I suspect that the clutch problem that the team have suffered over many events may have been the reason for that. So a lot of work going on in the garage as Villeneuve's car is up on the jacks.
Giancarlo Fisichella, here he is. We were speaking to him a few moments ago, and now he's up to speed once again, up to over 205 miles an hour at the end of this straight, and now fighting his way through this twiddly section on the infield. 7/10 down. Let's just ride with him, but see how the car's reacting. So a little bit of oversteer on the previous corner, that was fairly smooth and controlled. Now coming up to this sequence of tight corners. First the left-hander, this is more or less a 90-degree left. See how tight they have to go into the second right-hander. They don't get the chance to use the full width of the road into that one because of compromising the line into the next part. A real complex of corners where you have to sacrifice one to get the best exit through the next one. 1.3 seconds down currently on Michael Schumacher. Well, that still might put him similar sort of pace to what he was doing earlier on, mid 1 minute 12s, I would think.
Yeah, his best so far is at 25.8, and that was a 13.0, so you can see the car sliding around that, coming into that sequence of turn 8, then the very tight right, turn 9, and the equally tight 10, and it's a real frustration, that part of the racetrack. I think if any improvements could be made here in Indianapolis, that's the section of track, just free it up. Whereas on the other hand, out of 4 and into 5, it really is good. You can see a car working, you can see the movement of the car, and you don't get an awful lot of movement other than the spins that we've seen around 8, 9 and 10 over the 2 days of running.
Oh, that's right, it really is very, very fiddly up there. Irvine said they had their rather customary brake problems yesterday. It's been an issue with this car throughout the season, but he felt they'd made some progress. Barrichello, meanwhile, has a brake problem, goes straight on at turn 1.
Yes, Rubens doesn't ordinarily outbrake himself. He is a right-footed braker as opposed to Michael, who brakes with his left. But maybe just pushing the envelope a little bit too much, trying to play catch-up, in fact, for all the time that he lost on Friday after that accident where his car was fairly heavily damaged, though they built him up a brand new car overnight, so he couldn't have a better car under him right now.
Frentzen back at Sauber for the first time since 1996, the team with which he made his first foray into the World Championship, and impressed many people with those first couple of seasons. Even the late Ayrton Senna, of course, noticed Frentzen when he first saw him out testing in the Sauber and mentioned to Frank Williams at the time how impressed he was with him. And of course that led later on to Frentzen moving over to Williams. Sadly it was to be a somewhat disappointing time. Well, here's present Williams incumbent Ralf Schumacher, hard at work, and you can see he's pushing pretty hard through that sequence you were talking about, this more flowing section at the bottom end of the track.
Yes, just watching the amount of understeer that Ralph's having to deal with in those lower speed corners, 0.3 of a second away from Michael Schumacher, and that's in that relatively straightforward first sector. It's really now where that time, if it's going to ebb away with a car, so watch for 0.3 of a second or poorer from Ralph as he comes up. And by the time he gets out of turn 10, then he will get the second sector time.
You can really hear the traction control working through there, can't you? That fumbling of the engine.
Not so bad,
second.
only lost an extra tenth, an additional 10th of a second in that second sector, so now he's certainly got an opportunity to, well, let's say have a sniff at Barrichello, who is about 0.4 of a second faster than him as it stands. And as he comes up across this lap, well, no, he stays in third place. It's an improvement in personal time, but in that last sector he drifted away quite a lot.
Perhaps the tyres just giving up the grip a little bit on the last part of the lap. Great view from the mirror camera, and there is Sato, John. They've got the car finished and off he goes.
Well, that is a pretty good effort from the guys at Jordan to get the back end of the car off. And what they did was take the entire rear end off the spare car, so really all they're doing is disconnecting the oil and fuel and water lines, and then the 4 or 6 bolts that attach the engine to the back of the tub. Nevertheless, superb effort by the guys at Jordan, and Takuma Sato, I'm sure, will be buying them all something or other tonight.
Yes, I would think so. That is a good effort indeed to get him on track, and he still has half an hour of running, so very useful time now for him. Kimi Räikkönen on track, a second down, as you can see on the split point there, from the time that so far been set by Michael Schumacher.
And a little bit more careful coming out of turn 11. He didn't. Oh, and who's that?
Ralph.
It's Ralph. It is Ralph indeed. And that's down at turn 11 as well. So he gets caught maybe by the grass that caught Raikkonen. Raikkonen was more careful as he came across the line on that lap. Raikkonen's last lap, 1:12.486.
Michael Schumacher's going quickly again. He's on circuit, and once again he's got the fastest first sector time. Every time Michael comes out, we see the purple times come up alongside his name on the timing and scoring screen. That's button number 5, remember, on the digital.
I mean, actually did it worse than Raikkonen, but what he did was he kept the car going straight, but look how close he got to the tyre barrier on the left-hand side. So just exiting out of 11 too early, and that could be a function of the understeer we were picking up on Ralph's car a lap or two ago. Michael Schumacher drops a couple of tenths of a second in that second sector. Now into the final third sector, gets a 2 off the back. We think it is Takuma Sato. It is. So can he pick up a tenth or two here? 11.262 to beat. 11.519. But highest top speed so far for Michael, 333 kilometers per hour.
Again, it's faster than anyone else has done, though. Every time he goes out there, he's faster than anybody else, including his teammate Rubens Barrichello. And he is on the top of his form, isn't he? Driving with such incredible confidence and looking to take yet another victory here this weekend.
Ben, that 333k per hour is when they come across the start-finish line. There's probably another couple, 3, maybe even 400 yards before they get into braking for turn 1. But he only picked up a couple of clicks, in other words, at 335 over that remaining piece of racetrack. So Ferrari attaining its top speed effectively much earlier than maybe a lot of other cars, and that's what we've heard Villeneuve complain about, that the Honda engine in his car gets to the top speed, but he doesn't get to it quickly enough.
Well, Takuma Sato's on track. The engine's running okay now, but they've swapped it over. Now, Takuma, don't do anything silly. You need to get a few laps under your belt here. But as ever, he's attacking. He doesn't know how to drive at anything less than 10 tenths. He's always fully committed. And this will give him a first flying lap time. First flying lap of the day for the Japanese driver. 1:14.7. That is the slowest time so far, but it won't be long before he moves up the order.
Now, and he's going to find there's a huge amount of difference in the grip levels that he experienced Friday to what we are now seeing. And again, keep an eye on those top speeds for Takuma Sato, because otherwise being rather tongue-in-cheek about him being as heavy as a fly on a wet day, or being very low in the car. You see how low his head is. Now that's very important from an aerodynamic point of view for engine air intake. The lower you can get a driver down, the more air goes into that air box and the more horsepower your engine will generate.
Fastest of the Bridgestone runners at the moment is his teammate, apart from Ferrari. The next best is Fisichella, and we talked to him. That's definitely his aim, to be the fastest up behind Ferrari with the Bridgestone tyres. Sato now trying to move up the order, and as we look at the checkpoint times, he won't challenge just yet the time that's been set by his teammate. 2 seconds down there at the second checkpoint. Little improvement in time for Alex Young down at the bottom end of the field, 1:14.004, but here comes Sato now.
But just to give you an idea, the pace of the Jordan at the same sectors, Giancarlo Fisichella is about 0.6 of a second quicker, so Sato improves to 19th. So again, just getting accustomed to the car, the feel, the grip levels, but the speed of Fisichella, and Fisichella is improving in first and second sectors. So I expect to see an improvement in position. He needs to find 1.5 tenths of a second to put him in 6th place where Kimi Raikkonen is. And of interest to those of Ferrari fans, Michael set the fastest third sector on his last lap. He did 11.645.
Well, Ferrari have been extremely rapid here today. Let's just see Montoya cross the line. No great change. He stays in 5th. Well, the Ferraris have been very strong. Michael, particularly every time he goes out. Peter, do you have any information as to why that should be?
Well, as we all keep saying, there's a million reasons. But I think one of them might be, as John was accurately saying then, the Ferrari's achieving its top speed much sooner. It's probably because they don't seem to be running a lot of rear wing. And if we look at Williams now, they've got that third element there. That's a lot of drag. One has to say that's probably because all the Michelin teams still need to run a lot of downforce in order to get the grip they want. Ferrari have got more given downforce and grip, a lot of that coming from their chassis tyre relationship, and they're much cleaner through the air as a result. They're running less wing.
Well, that makes it that much easier for them, and no doubt the others will be hoping to use that Bridgestone tyre to good effect. Fisichella is now 6th fastest overall, so that's a good little improvement for the Italian. Puts him ahead of Raikkonen and Irvine. Fredson has popped up to 9th as well with the Sauber. So he's one of the Bridgestone runners that's moving up the order.
Yeah, so just looking through the times, I mean, it's incredibly close here at Indianapolis. If you take Ralf Schumacher, currently 4th quickest on a 12.051. You go down to Heidfeld, who's 14th. He's done a 12.9, and that group of cars, 4th to 14th, 10 cars, that's going to be tough for qualifying.
Yeah, it's going to be crucial, isn't it? Just getting that one lap in, and perhaps the benefit of a bit of a tow around the around the bank section. We have seen that in the past, John, particularly the first year, where the two Ferrari teammates actually towed each other around, and I think Michael gained something like 3 or 4 tenths of a second by getting a decent tow from teammate Rubens Barrichello.
The difficulty in doing it is that you can actually lose if you get too close at some of these other corners. I mean, ideally here's where you want to pick up the tow. What you'd like is your teammate actually to back off and give you the chance to pick up the tow once you're into this sequence of 2 flat-out banked corners and gain that way. But if you're going out in tandem, then in fact you can probably lose more than you would gain.
Well, we'll have to wait and see whether the teams do work together at all. Something to watch out for this afternoon. Kimi Raikkonen and David Coulthard, though, of course, have been against each other in qualifying throughout the season so far. And Raikkonen has out-qualified Coulthard on 10 occasions to 5. So Raikkonen definitely with the edge, you have to say, in qualifying, although Coulthard perhaps with the edge in the race performances. Remember, he's scored 37 points this year, whereas Raikkonen has scored 20 points. Having said that, Raikkonen's had an awful lot of mechanical poor reliability.
We'll have to do another run on these tyres anyway, because we have to use these in qualifying. So at the minute now they're just going to be peaking with their graining, so we need to do at least another 2 time laps and get the graining off them.
More work going on in terms of tyre management there at Jordan. Michael Schumacher is waiting for his chance to come back out again. He's completed 15 laps so far today.
Yes, there's a fairly serious look in the eyes of Michael Schumacher, and whether he is considering this run to be one where he can see if he can seek further improvement. We don't know which wheels and tyres they're going to put on the car there. Right front still the tyre blanket on. I'm assuming that they're not going to put on a new set of tyres at this stage, because we've got some 23 minutes of the session remaining, so it would be rather early. But of course it's important to find a point in the track when it's also clear, and right now we've got about 5 cars, 6 cars out on track, so obviously not a bad time to think about it.
Discussions going on there in the Williams pit as Montoya works hard to improve the handling and balance. Don't forget, he was the pole sitter last time out at Monza with that new record-breaking lap. It's not going to be quite so easy here at Indianapolis. Ferraris have looked strong all weekend so far. Barrichello, meanwhile, 2nd fastest overall. He is some 4 tenths of a second faster than David Coulthard. Coulthard into the 1 minute 11s now as well. But only those 3 drivers, Schumacher, Michael, Barrichello and Coulthard, in the 1 minute 11 bracket.
So Barrichello makes a fairly conservative exit out of 11 and picks up, and he goes back into the pits. That's why it was conservative out of 11.
So he just uses the time now to make some more changes to the car perhaps. Comes in very quickly to the speed limit line. It's that 2nd line. That's what Ange Pasquale was telling us. It's very close to the Toyota pit down there that they actually hard on the brakes.
Yeah, I think Ange has got about 2 chances of getting that line pulled further back down the pit lane, because if it does, then it would have a bearing, particularly on anybody who was thinking about a 2-stop strategy, since most will obviously go for a 1. That's the consensus view, and it's pretty much what everybody thinks Ferrari will probably do as well. Though last year Barrichello did make 2 stops, and whether that was of any consequence or not to him, he did sadly retire very close to the end. Did 71 of the 73 laps with that big blow up, so he stopped lap 27 and lap 50, and the only other driver to do 2 stops was Nick Heidfeld, and well, Nick finished down in 6th place.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see what happens on Sunday in terms of strategy. Look at the conditions, the weather conditions. Great view as we ride with Villeneuve. That mist and the fog that we had earlier on today is clearing, John, and the temperature could really increase quite markedly between now and the start of qualifying.
Yeah, we got a track temperature yesterday. It was up around 26, 27 degrees, ambient 24 maximum, and humidity at 61%. So we're not quite at that levels, but of course qualifying will commence here at 1 o'clock in Indianapolis, and there's almost the best part of 2.25 hours to go. And there's a brand new set of tyres, well, as shiny as they are. Let's have a look at Juan Pablo Montoya. This is going to give us a glimpse. Ralf Schumacher already out on a brand new set of tyres, personal fastest in first and second sectors. So Montoya mirroring what his teammates doing, and we'll get an indication as to where Williams maybe be in qualifying session.
Interesting, isn't it? As you said, it's quite early to go onto new tyres, but that's what Williams have decided to do. And let's see what this time is for Ralf Schumacher as he comes across the line. A 1 minute 11.849. So still not faster than Barrichello, and certainly no quicker than Michael Schumacher. Montoya now also on new tyres.
Yes, Ralph picked up one place. He deposed David Coulthard, but there's less. Well, it's just under half a tenth of a second between Coulthard in fourth and Ralph in third. And Ralf Schumacher did have a set of fresh rubber, as it does Montoya. And Mario Thyssen and Gerhard Berger studying the monitors, watching the screens. And if they could will these two cars to go quicker, no doubt they would succeed.
Yes, that's right. A lot of effort has got in. Oh, and Raikkonen there just getting a little bit wide once again as he came through turn 8.
Yeah, and he's backed off. He was messy through 8 and 9, so he's backed off and doesn't want to overrun. He's got, I think it's Montoya in fact ahead of him on track, so just backs off and then begins the process of a flying lap. But of course he's wasted a lap with that unnecessarily untidy exit through 8 and 9.
So Raikkonen will complete the lap. It'll be a slowish one, but just ahead of him. Montoya now going on to a flying lap, and we'll perhaps get a chance to see just how quickly the Colombian can go on his new set of tyres. And looking for the temperature to build, no doubt, as well towards qualifying. Here we are on board Montoya.
So Juan Pablo, we're looking to see what he's going to do as he comes up to that first sector. Well, at 22.411 is a long way. That's over half a second. That's showing 2/10, but looking at the best times, there's a problem.
He's backed off big time there, and I don't know whether he had a problem or whether he just felt it wasn't a good lap that he had going.
He's backed off so much, I can't think of it. He's in the middle of the racetrack. I mean, what is he doing? Either stay one side or the other. Now that's looking for a position. He'll not have made those drivers particularly happy because they wouldn't have known what's going on.
Might be making some changes, adjustments that he can make from within the cockpit. He can change some engine settings, change brake balance, one or two other changes that he can make.
Yes, you're right, that's what he was doing, but he was not very thoughtful about it.
Back up to speed now. And of course the trouble is the best of the tyres might be gone this time when he gets back on to a flying lap once again. Following around, he's actually got Michael Schumacher ahead of him.
He's running in the middle of the track again. Well, Eddie Irvine in the meantime is improving in both first and second sector. So Irvine currently 8th, 1 minute 12.546. So we don't know whether Irvine has got fresh rubber on, but he's done something to find in person. Oh, he has. He's gone 4th quickest.
Good effort. 11.881. That's almost the same speed that Ralf Schumacher did a few moments ago. So that Jaguar really is working well here.
And look, Montoya drives over the curving on the exit of turn 7. As well, once again, it's down to Alex Young, and Montoya's passed this, so our other cars, but a disappointment for Alex Young. But anybody who's on a lap, because those yellow flags and lights, and Irvine in fact does come around as Montoya slides out of turn into turn 11.
Oh, look at the time though, 1.6 seconds down on Michael Schumacher. This is not going to be anything special at all. He won't be in the 111s, but Michael Schumacher's on a quick lap, and he may well go even faster than he has already.
Well, Montoya is so fed up with himself, he pulls into the pits. Schumacher comes across 11.2, well, he's with 81 thousandth of a second, and that middle sector time clearly was a monster time. The first and third sectors didn't match it, but nonetheless, another warning to everybody. Again, a lap that's faster than the rest of the field, an 11.343.
So Montoya brings it in, and that was a little bit of a disappointing run, I would think, from his point of view. Backed off on the first flying lap, made 1 or 2 changes, but didn't really seem to be happy, be confident. Left him down in 6th place so far, that time that he set earlier on today.
So that's one set of brand new tyres that, well, whether they've lost that little edge they would have. It was strange because Montoya, we saw him running as he came out of turn 7, running in the middle of the road. Then on his flying lap, he went over the curb and actually effectively off the track. He also, as he was coming up to the beginning of that lap, was driving down the centre of the main straight.
Yeah, it is slightly odd. There's the man who's gone 4th fastest, though. Great effort from Eddie Irvine, and just proving once again that Jaguar is much closer to the pace. Here we are with Heinz Harald Frentzen. First sector, nothing particularly special. He's currently 9th fastest overall in the Sauber. This is the car that's normally driven by Felipe Massa, of course, and Frentzen in the car this weekend. Massa would have had a penalty this weekend. He would have been pushed 10 places down on the grid from wherever he qualified as a result of the incident with De La Rosa at the Italian Grand Prix. Across the line for Frentzen then, no improvement in time, 12.7 as opposed to a 12.5 that he did earlier.
But he did actually pick up a little bit of time in that 3rd sector, so he did make an improvement in sector time. And of course all these time sectors are very important to teams because they will take the best of each individual sector, analyse it, try to see how they can basically compromise to get the car to perform in all 3 sectors at the pace of their personal best times.
Brazilian supporters, and there is the man most likely of the Brazilians to come through and perhaps win here this weekend. It is Rubens Barrichello, but he and Michael Schumacher are slogging it out at the moment as they get into the final 15 minutes of free practice for the United States Grand Prix.
So Schumacher comes across the line, and 11.2, well, he's what, 2.5 tenths away again, but he was fastest of all, so he's putting together different sector times. He's working with the team, and what they will try to do is put that all together so as he's got a car that is perfect in all 3 of these sectors around the 2.6 mile Indy circuit.
Riding with Rubens. And a good first sector time from him, better than his own previous best, not quite the fastest.
Up, Ben,
he is up. So that's good stuff from Rubens Barrichello. And this could snatch the fastest time away from Michael Schumacher, faster than anybody in the mid-sector. And as the sun comes out and burns its way through the early morning cloud, Rubens Barrichello putting the accident behind him that he had here yesterday against the wall on the outside. Across the line he goes. It's not quite enough to eclipse Michael Schumacher. He stays 2nd fastest. Down there in the Ferrari pit, Luca Badoa, test driver, just watching progress for the moment. Not much time left in this session. Let's see what Michael Schumacher's up to now. This is not a quick lap. In fact, he's heading straight back into pit lane.
So maybe Michael is aware that Rubens did pick up a lot of time, and I just wondered, I couldn't get a very clear glimpse of those tyres. Michael, I mean, really pushing the envelope coming into the pit lane. I'm not sure that he actually got it slowed down enough as he came across that line. As we watch Pedro De La Rosa in the second of the Jaguars. Right now, De La Rosa is in 12th place on a 12.679.
Across the line he stays there. I see that the track temperatures now come up to 29 degrees, so we have seen quite a climb in the last sort of 20 minutes or so as the sun burns through. I just wonder how high it will be by the time we get to the start of qualifying.
Well, hopefully the sun will come out, and no doubt that will have a bearing on track temperature. But yesterday it didn't get much above the 26, so clearly today looks to be a better day, and of course with more rubber down, and then finally with all the fuel out and the full access to the RPM that you do have in qualifying. Well, it's going to be a pretty exciting but a very tense qualifying session, with expectations maybe not now so much as I'd hoped to see at the front, but maybe from rows 3 back to rows 8, maybe possibly row 9, maybe as little as a second covering those 6 rows.
Just 12 minutes to go. We're riding on board the BAR Honda of Jacques Villeneuve. He has just gone through that first section of track, and he's currently down in 17th place, so a long way down the order, but let's see whether he can do something special towards the end of the session.
Yes, his car was in the garage up on those stands, work carried out on it, so he's now just beginning this flying lap. So out of turn 7 down this back straight, And very critical where you make your judgment to brake, because it's easy if you get it wrong to be off track. And it's important, Ben, just as you know, to get the position of the car here. Critical to get the nose of the car, ride the curb, then through 10, do the same thing. Then it's the pick up of the throttle and the drive into 11. Just a quick breathe on the throttle, and then flat out from here all the way down to turn 1.
Now the driver can just sort of sit back and relax here, can't he? I know it seems strange when you're building up to 200 miles an hour, but as long as he just guides it gently, easily through this right-hander, he is onto the straight and sits there, foot flat to the floor, across the line, 13th. So that's a good improvement for Villeneuve at 12.7. But boy, it's going to be close. There are 3 drivers currently on 1 minute 12.7 something, separated just by just a few hundredths of a second. There's him, there's Panis and Trulli as well.
Alan McNish, he's on a 13.2, and I don't see anything on our screen. That's button 5 on your handset if you want to join us and see the teams as they occur. So, well, 13.8, disappointment for Toyota. Mika Salo doing slightly better than Alan McNish. He's in 11th place on a 12.6.
Using his experience of having been here a couple of years ago, of course. There you can see the front tyres working hard again on Ralf Schumacher's car. A little bit of understeer, but he gets it sorted out, and now heading along the back stretch down towards turn 8. This is where he went off yesterday, took off the rear wing. No such problems this time.
It looks actually, I mean, Ralph, maybe there's just that camera angle, but it looks quite slow, as if he's really having to hold back, wait, to ensure that he can then finally get on the throttle.
8/10 down. It's not going to be his best lap, but low 12s are still on. So a reasonable lap from Ralf Schumacher. He is already third, and though this won't improve on that, he's the best of the rest behind the Ferraris currently in this session. Eddie Irvine just behind him. So there we are, a 12.181. That's about 3/10 slower than his previous best. Kimi Raikkonen looks as though he might be on a lap that will improve on his current 8th place. And both McLarens finding themselves in the top 8, with Coulthard in 5th position.
Well, there's a 3-element rear wing being taken off, and let's have a look and see whether they're putting the 2-element one back on. Well, it's this 3-element wing as well.
Yeah,
what the differences are, we need to have a little closer look at that, but certainly
maybe just the angle on the flap slightly different, and it's easier to change the whole wing than it is.
But also the reason they would do that is because they're saving weight.
Yeah,
we mentioned that a few Grand Prix ago, that rather than have adjusters on your wings, then if you have wings made up with a degree difference, it seems an extreme expense, but that's where performance comes from. If you can save minute amounts of weight in those areas, you can save weight overall in the car.
Good 6th place for Kimi Raikkonen there, so he improves. That brings him just behind his teammate David Coulthard.
Likewise, Juan Pablo Montoya is back out. He's improved in the first sector, and in fact he improves overall because he's gone 6th and demoted Kimi Raikkonen back down to 7th.
Montoya back on track once again. 7/10 of a second down, he's, as you say. And Raikkonen just a couple of tenths slower than that. There is that Colombian support that we've been talking about this weekend. Fisichella is down in 8th place at the moment, Frentzen 9th, Kimi Raikkonen still on a quickish lap. Heidfeld down in 10th place, just coming back out onto the circuit. Mika Salo 11th, then De La Rosa, Villeneuve, Panis, Trulli, Button, McNish, Webber. Sato still languishing down on the bottom end of the timesheets.
Yeah, David Coulthard, I think he was looking for track space, but sort of rather getting trapped by Raikkonen and by Panis. So David Coulthard has decided actually to come back into the pits because he couldn't gain any advantage. And well, let's have a look. Has he gone? No, yet. We're just trying to see if Coulthard's come back in. Looking at the track map that we have here. So yes, he does. So both the McLarens come in. I think that Coulthard actually was looking for track position when Panis and Coulthard and Raikkonen came through, and then found himself rather late in the track to pick up speed, so drives back in. We've just got 7 minutes, Ben, of this session remaining, so pretty much everybody back in the pits. Michael Schumacher's on track, but just on a very slow lap. But he's starting now what will be probably a somewhat quicker one.
Be interesting to see what sort of pace he can set now, because the conditions perhaps are not as ideal as they were early this morning when they were putting in those very rapid laps. Of course, the temperature's coming up. We've lost perhaps some of that air density as well, although he is up on the first split, so this could still be another quick lap from Michael Schumacher. Target time, his own, is a 1 minute 11.262 to beat.
So let's see whether the world champion can maintain that pace. We've seen him lose a little bit of time against his own best times in this middle sector. Into turn 9, keep it tight all the way around, hug it, then just aim over to the left, pick up the curb, then it's that blend across the track just onto the the curb on the right hand side, and it's up by 92 thousandths of a second. Not very much time, but you know, it's all time.
Still valuable, and this could be another faster time coming up from Michael Schumacher. He's dominated every session so far this weekend, and as he comes through turn 13 safely, is it enough to go faster again? Yes, it is. Michael Schumacher reasserts his authority, maintains his dominance here with a time that's another 1/10 of a second faster, and still over 2/10 of a second faster than anyone else.
Yeah, he just literally shaved hundredths of seconds off in each of the 3 sectors, but putting them all together as he did, he got a good lap, he had no traffic, he was able to basically place the car where he wants. Nick Heidfeld looking to see an improvement. Heidfeld currently 10th on a 12.6. He's improved in first, second sectors, but he stays in 6th place.
6th position then for Nick Heidfeld in the Sauber, 1:11.910, just a thousandth of a second slower than David Coulthard in 5th place, and that's how close it will be during the qualifying session as well. Meanwhile, Giancarlo Fisichella now pushed down to 9th place with 1 or 2 improvements around him. Will he be coming out in the last 5 minutes? I would imagine he will. They're looking at perhaps getting out on track at the right moment. We have some 7 cars on track currently. Kimi Raikkonen waits for another opportunity, as the engineers will discuss with him any changes he wants to make before this final run. With a comparison of tyre notes, no doubt, between some of the teams.
Yeah, they're quite a long way on that pit wall over to the garage to get a clear indication. The best they can do is just, I think, indicate whether it's a brand new set or a set that had been used. As Kimi Raikkonen sets or prepares. Now that set of tyres has done a run, but it's still a probably fairly fresh set, as the engineers once again cover them up as they go through this whole sequence of firing up an engine quite complex. De La Rosa is improving. This is Eddie Irvine, his teammate Irvine, currently 4th and again improving. He's only 2/10 of a second away in that first sector, and Irvine, well, he's got clear air, but Michael Schumacher is ahead of him, but it's not going to come into play.
So another quick lap coming up potentially here for the Jaguar, and he has been fast all weekend so far. Can they maintain this upward curve of performance? Good stuff, but he is a little close, isn't he, to Schumacher?
It just depends what Schumacher's doing. Is he coming in, or is he going to continue around? He's not on a quick lap, but there we see 4/10 of a second. He's dropped a further 2/10. Nevertheless, this could see Irvine maybe displace Ralf Schumacher. It will do, and certainly put him 3rd quickest as long as this final sector is up to speed. Look at the difference in straight line speeds between the Ferrari and the Jaguar.
Across the line, Eddie Irvine goes 3rd, and that puts him ahead of Ralf Schumacher, again showing the pace of the Jaguar, and just 3/10 of a second slower than Rubens Barrichello. Good effort from Irvine.
Yes, and I mean, what a change in around and fortunes for this team. Really at the toughest, I think, of seasons imaginable. Staff changes, technical problems. Finally, and we saw this coming through, I think, clearly in Belgium, confirmed in Italy, and certainly being consolidated here so far in Indianapolis.
Williams and McLaren are going to have to watch out for that Jaguar, John, and that's something that we would not really have expected, certainly not earlier on in this season, as Takuma Sato makes his way around, still last of all at the moment, on a 13.593. He's slower at the moment than even Alex Young, who's just improved recently on a 1:13.562. But a good improvement there for Sato. He's slightly quicker than his previous best through the first sector.
Yes, he's just half a second away from Michael Schumacher, who's fastest of all. But there's a long way to go in this lap. It's a 2.6 mile lap, and it's now in this sector 2, where all the difficulties arise, and that time that you feel that you're going to make up, you can see again tentative on the entry, just feeling the car in on the steering wheel, a little bit more confident going through 10. Not using the full width of the track on the exit. Again, slightly sensitive on the entry into 11. Uses the curb on the exit. So he ought to be able to improve. Well, look at Fisichella's time of 12.2 against Takuma Sato's 13.5. Oh, Raikkonen! Bang! And at turn 8.
Yep, he's gone off fairly big time, taking the front wing off that time. and I wonder whether he put a wheel over the edge as he did earlier on. This is a different corner to where we saw him spin earlier today, and he is out of the car, and that's the end of the session.
Yes, not, I think, too much damage. I think mainly around the nose and the wings. I don't believe, it's difficult to see, I don't think the front suspension on the left side got too much contact, but Kimi has been pushing the envelope. We've seen him on a couple of occasions today. So here we come down 7, turns into 8. Oh yes, very quickly the back end just breaks away, really no opportunity at all. Oh, he did get the front suspension, probably not severely, but that'll be watch it again. Oh, back end, I mean, no warning, no progression, either grip or zero grip, and makes contact with the tyre barrier.
So unfortunately the Finns session ends earlier than expected, but we are expecting the checkered flag, as you can see, with the countdown clock at the top of the screen in just a little while. Michael Schumacher ending up with the fastest time by the looks of things. So I don't think anyone out there currently is going to improve significantly. There is Ralf Schumacher, just gone through the first sector, but not a particularly quick first sector time, and of course we've still got the yellows out for Raikkonen's stranded car.
And those yellow lights on screen, the yellow flags waved, of course, mean that you are not permitted to go through this sector of racetrack quicker than the quickest time you've done through this session. So basically the session is over, everybody will pile back into the pits and just conclude, well, maybe a minute or two earlier. Now the session is finally over, the flag is out. So great frustration for those who are waiting for the last possible opportunity. And Ralf Schumacher just comes around turn 12 and then cuts back into the pit lane.
So all the free practice is done and dusted. The temperatures have been increasing, and they will continue to increase as we go towards qualifying. Star performer, I would say, of this session, no doubt about it, Eddie Irvine, third fastest, ahead of the Williams of Ralf Schumacher, the McLaren of David Coulthard, the Sauber of Nick Heidfeld putting in a pretty good effort with that 6th fastest time. Montoya finding himself languishing down in 7th, Raikkonen 8th. Fisichella, who we're looking at right now, also under yellows here, of course, is 9th fastest with a little bit of work to do, but the times are so close in that mid part of the grid. He's only 0.4 of a second slower than Ralf Schumacher, and yet there's some 5 places between them.
Now, Michael Schumacher has taken the flag. Nevertheless, he'll use this so-called cooling down lap to gain as much information as he can. Kimi Raikkonen just gets a glimpse as he comes through turn 8. That's the corner that caught the young Finn out, and comes up to the second sector, and but he's backed off, and he's not going to try and gain any further speed, and exits out through 11 and cuts back and will make it himself into the pit lanes. Ralf Schumacher, well, he'll not be happy with Jaguar being ahead of him, but of course qualifying may be a different story. But I don't understand Montoya, 7th quickest this morning. He's been doing odd things in the racetrack, obviously clearly not happy with the car. And this rather roller coaster ride that we've seen it from time to time with Juan Pablo, hopefully he will get it right, as will Ralf Schumacher, and at least offer some kind of serious threat to the two Ferraris.
Well, they can't blame the tyres too much. I know it might not be the ideal, but just look at what Irvine's done. Let's take a look at the times then. Michael Schumacher setting the pace here in free practice ahead of his teammate Rubens Barrichello, but Eddie Irvine getting the Jaguar ahead of both Williams, both McLarens and the Saubers. It's an excellent effort from Irvine. Ralf Schumacher has to settle for 4th with Coulthard 5th. Nick Heidfeld in 6th place, so he's the best of the rest of the Bridgestone runners. He'll be pleased about that, but Frenzen's up in the top 10 as well, as these two take each other on for the first time as teammates at the Sauber team. Mika Salo 11th fastest ahead of De La Rosa in the 2nd Jaguar. Then the two BAR Hondas very evenly matched, but further down than they would have liked. Look at where the two Renaults are though. 15th for Trulli, 17th for Jenson Button. Takuma Sato put in a better lap just at the end of the session to move up to 16th. McNish disappointed, down in 18th place, and only 0.3 faster than Mark Webber in the Minardi. And look at Alex Young, competitive with Mark Webber in this free practice session.
Yes, but of course Webber stopped at the very beginning of this session and didn't get the benefit of another 45 minutes running, so slightly artificial.
Let's take a look back